Let's go. Let's go to our guest, who is joining us right now on the Harbor One hotline. He writes for The Athletic, and he writes about the Celtics. I'm talking, of course, about the great Jared Weiss, who joins us here on the program. Jared, how you doing?
Not as well as the Boston Bruins, apparently.
No, I mean, no one's doing as well as the Boston Bruins, and not even the Celtics as well as they're doing. Big game last night, a big win, certainly not a pretty one. Main takeaway from what we saw last night at TD Garden, Jared?
I mean, hideous wins. That's a Celtics classic right there. I think the main takeaway is that no matter how far ahead in first place the Celtics are, it doesn't even matter if the Warriors are a play-in team that just squeaks into the playoffs. When these two teams play, this is the best of the best in the NBA. And it was an absolute battle royale. Honestly, it was a hideous game. I know people are talking about it being like an incredible, riveting classic of a regular season game, but these teams were just trying to give it away to each other over and over again. I don't think I've ever seen a team turn it over that many times like the Celtics did in crunch time, where they were just turning it over at the backcourt. Like, forget about plays going wrong. They would just get a rebound, try to make an outlet pass, and would get picked off, and they would tumble it away. I've never seen anything like that. The Celtics were once again reminded that no matter how good, no matter how talented they are, the Warriors understand them and can execute a defensive game plan against them at a level that nobody else can.
Jared, so after the game, Joe Mazzulla said that it was a really fun game, but it wasn't a fun start for Jason Tatum, at least offensively. Came out really cold the first three quarters. Can you find any through line to how he goes from having a 51-point game and then having a shooting performance like he did to start out most of the game last night?
Yeah, that was the Charlotte Hornets. There's a through line right there. The scale between a regular defense and a Warriors playoff defense is incalculable. It's a difference between the Boston Bruins and the 92 Dream Team. Like, that's how big the difference is. And I mean, there is definitely a psychological. Exactly right. So there's no difference then. There is a skill impact between going up against like Cody Martin and Andrew Wiggins for Tatum. Draymond Green is lurking, and Draymond Green is just the one defender in the NBA that Tatum can't score on. Like, Tatum can figure it out against Wiggins. Wiggins does an amazing job against him, but Draymond just stops him everywhere he goes. He could not find rhythm. His shot wasn't falling, and that happens from time to time. And usually he can make up for it by getting to the line a bunch of times or just finding a way to bully a matchup into the paint and get to a shot he likes. But the Warriors don't ever give him a part of the game where he can find his rhythm. And so he just doesn't really have a chance to find his rhythm throughout the game. But credit to Joe. Like, Joe created some kind of newer actions in crunch time on a few of the plays that they usually run that were kind of slightly different wrinkles to what we usually see. And it threw off the Warriors just enough that Tatum was actually able to finally start scoring at the end of the game when he wasn't turning the ball over.
Jared, we're far enough into the season now that I think we can all agree that this is the way it's going to be. Big minutes for Jaylen Brown, even coming off of an injury. Jason Tatum played 48 minutes in that game. Load management, I think you could probably scratch that right off here, but is Joe Mazzulla going to continue, you think, now that we're getting to the more important part of the year? Is he going to keep with these minutes?
I mean, if Jason Tatum is playing 48 minutes a game, that might not be sustainable.
Right.
I've been pretty concerned. I remember when he took that game off to do his son's birthday party, people were like, oh, my God, I can't believe that they gave him a day off for his son's birthday party. So what it was a rest game. That was his load management day. They let him take the whole weekend to go do that, which is definitely a little bit out of character for a rest day. But sprinkling in rest days for Tatum, and they absolutely have to, because Tatum should be playing about 34 minutes a game, but he's a few above that. They've been pushing him. There's been a lot of games where he's crossing to the 40-minute range, and I think that's okay earlier in the year. I think it's really honestly towards this part of the season, before you get the All-Star break and you get a little bit of time to recover, where they start to really feel the need for load management. So I wouldn't be surprised if they start doing that here. I mean, they're visiting Orlando and then have Miami the second night of the back-to-back. I'm not reporting this, but I'm saying I wouldn't be shocked if some of these guys got a break in those games. Obviously, we know Rob Williams and Al Horford will probably split those two games. Tatum, we know what the issue was with him last year. in the playoffs. It wasn't talent. It wasn't that he wasn't ready. Those were part of it, but it was that he was tired and he was also hurt. He had a wrist injury, but he was losing. I remember hearing about him losing legs by the time the Miami series was starting. So when it got to Golden State and Golden State executed the perfect game plan against him, he just didn't stand a chance. So they're great. They're in first place by a mile right now. They have plenty of breathing room to let Tatum and Brown get some rest in. Brown obviously has been resting because he was injured. Tatum, he definitely needs a few days off sprinkled in here over the next month or so.
We're talking to Jared Weiss of The Athletic. So, Jared, we were talking about the turnovers last night and some of the really boneheaded turnovers that we saw the stars on this team make. Is that just kind of who these guys are now? Like, at this point, we've seen them reach such sky-high heights of basketball. Are we just going to have to learn to live with these silly turnovers at times?
I mean, I think that's what happens with everybody. I mean, Steph Curry has crazy turnover nights all the time, and that's honestly a part of his play style is that he takes huge risks all the time, and they don't work out. And I mean, Steph Curry, he took over the game at times, and he still finished with, I think it was less than 30 points, right? So it wasn't like he completely dominated. When you're a star player, it's about you have to make a ton of decisions throughout the game, and you're trying to generally make the right one. You're not trying to make an incredible move every single time, but steadily making the right plays that it builds up to a big aggregate performance. I think Tatum has been great at that this year. His turnover numbers are pretty solid. Smart and Jaylen Brown, they turn it over a good amount for different reasons. I mean, Smart because he's a super aggressive passer and makes a lot of daring plays, also makes a lot of silly plays. But his turnovers have been a lot better this year than they have in the past, and his assist numbers have been up. And then Jaylen just gets into these modes sometimes where he wants to dribble through the entire defense, and he gets into like a creative hesitation move, and it gets deflected, and then he dribbles it off of his knee. And then, to his credit, he usually dives on the floor and recovers it. So his loose balls don't always hurt him the turnovers, but he does it enough that he still racks up turnovers. So I think Jaylen right there, I guess this season, he's the only player that I think has been a major turnover concern, but it's been consistent with his career. So if you're talking about learning to live with it, maybe Jaylen is the one guy where that's the case. But I think Tatum and Smart have been probably having their best seasons as far as taking care of the ball.
Jared, do any other teams in the East scare you?
Yes, Brooklyn and Milwaukee have the potential to be fearful. They have the potential to be as good as Boston. Boston, I think, because of health and because of their depth at the top of their rotation, has been able to sustain throughout the season more consistently, while Brooklyn and Milwaukee have really had health issues that have hurt them throughout the year. But those two teams, when they're fully healthy, are able to get to the level that Boston's able to get to. And then there's a couple teams behind them that clearly have that potential, but I still think Milwaukee and Brooklyn have the talent, have the star talent, have a good complementary core around them that they definitely can beat the Celtics in a playoff series.
Notice you didn't say the Sixers or the Heat.
I would say that the Sixers and the Cavs are on that tier right below those two teams. And then we all know Miami is always capable of getting there. But like also during the regular season, Miami only has like two starters available a night. So it's always hard to gauge them in the regular season.
Jared, how would you grade out the Celtics bench in terms of the guys who were in the rotation last night? Thinking of Malcolm Brogdon, Grant Williams, Derek White. Where do you feel like the team is with that group of guys?
Top 8 rotation, which is what your rotation generally is in the playoffs. They're the best in the league, right? I mean, it's not a shocker. They're first place, but their bench core, you have 3 guys that would be starting on a good amount of teams in the NBA probably. And they're versatile. Like that's what's great about it. Is Derek White can play 3 different roles for you. Grant Williams can play 3 different positions for you. He can guard wings. He can guard bigs when he has to. He can be a rebounder. He can be a floor spacer. And then we know what Brogdon is. You know, Brogdon has played. He's played with blinders on a lot this year, and he's made a lot of. He's had some games where he's taken a lot of bad shots, last night included. But he also could completely win you a game whenever he wants to. So. And his defense hasn't quite been where it's been in the past. I wonder if that's going to pick up as the year goes on. But they've got 3 really good players there. And when you get to the playoffs, it's not going to come. I've had a few people tell me this over the last week, and I completely agree with it, that winning a playoff series is not going to come down to your 9th man. And, you know, right now this team is searching for a 9th man that they can really rely on to not get to not be a vulnerability point in a playoff series. And maybe that does happen, but those guys only play like 6 minutes a game in the playoffs. You're usually not going to make or break a playoff series in those minutes. So I think that they're in a fine position with their roster right now. They don't have to make moves. If they could use a second-round pick to pick up another solid rotation piece that plugs one of the small holes that they have in their rotation, that makes sense. But making a bigger trade and using a first-round pick for it, it's not necessary because they just did that in 2022. They acquired 2 great bench players with first-round picks to already build a pretty complete bench.
All right, we'll leave it right there then. Jared Weiss, thanks so much for the time today. You can check him out on Twitter at Jared Weiss NBA. You're in Toronto now, yes?
Yeah, I'm staring at the CN Tower right now.
Enjoy Toronto and enjoy Florida, which is where you're going right after this. And I'm very jealous of you for that because it's snowing here now. So enjoy the rest of the road trip, and we'll talk to you soon.
I'm looking at snow. I cannot wait to see palm trees.
Very good. That's Jared Weiss.